This podcast is brought to you by Always Possible.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
Napoleon allegedly called us a nation of shopkeepers. It might not have been him, but it was said because the British don't make anything and we don't mine anything. We just sell it and we enjoy the dance of service more than the substance of product. It wasn't meant as a compliment, but maybe it's not wrong. And since the Second World War, the British have been on steroids in our obsession about shops. Choice, value, experience. For decades, we've defined community via the corner shop, economy via the high street, and aspiration via the trips to Oxford Street or Lakeside or Harrods. But with the internet has come an unravelling of whether our concept of a shop is actually what we think it is. Do we need them to be bricks and mortar? Do we need people to sell us things, or can machines do it? Do we need to touch things to know if we want to buy them? And who gets to decide all this? And who would open a new shop in the 2020s? Consumers can't make their minds up. Rent and energy costs are ludicrous. A stagnant economy means that we're earning barely any more than we were a decade ago. And maybe, just maybe, the romance of the US consumer as king philosophy is shifting towards something more critical, cynical, simple, sustainable. The optimist in me sees shops beginning to focus on what the world needs and not just what greedy people want. But that's terribly naive, right? Whatever's going on, it is clear that the business models of Lidl, Aldi, Asda, Tesco, Morrison's are extraordinarily good if what we want as a society is cheap food and lots of it, while shareholders and private pension funds quietly top-slice the return. But is that what we want? In this episode of the Possibility Club, the spotlight is on the 21st century supermarket and the practical bravery of a particular family who decided that the British public maybe doesn't want squeezed farmers and suppliers, low-quality processed gunk, and lots of waste, a lack of control, and a net benefit to invisible squillionaires. So today I'm talking to a supermarket rebel with a cause, co-founder of the Hisbe supermarket shops and the Good Business Club, and a legend in the social enterprise world, who has just finished a successful £100,000 crowdfunder to supercharge her mission further. I'm delighted to bring to you my chat with Ruth Anslow. So this is the Possibility Club. Hello. Welcome. I'm Richard Freeman, and we're doing the usual. I'm talking to an extraordinary guest about change, impact, rebelliousness in this one, more of that later, and what disruption looks like when we take it from the ideal to the practical. Practical bravery is our focus. So welcome. If this is the first time you're listening, where have you been? But if you're back, you'll know the drill. But hopefully this will tickle your ears and excite your brain cells, because I know we're in for a really interesting conversation. So my special guest this week is Ruth Anslow, co-founder of Hisbe, a brilliant supermarket that I've been a patron of for a number of years, a self-proclaimed supermarket rebel who is taking on the big giants and redefining what it is for supermarkets and their role within community, with supply chains, with the environment. No mean feat, given the scale of that marketplace. And that's what I'm hoping to explore a little bit. So firstly, Ruth, how are you?
Hi, Richard. I'm good, thank you. I'm busy as ever. But well, just happy to still be standing after a crazy few years with COVID and so on. And it's nice to feel like, you feel the vibe in the shops that people are starting to move on from that and feel some sense of normalcy again. And that's really nice. That's welcome, I think. It's been so disruptive. It's nice to feel that vibe back.
So it's fair to say you've lent into a pretty big challenge. So your two stores, Hisbe, standing for how it should be, are bricks and mortar supermarkets. In a world where we're told everything is going to be digital and the high streets are not fit for purpose, no one wants to go anymore. In a world where the supermarkets are, making squillions every week by just kind of rigging the food supply, the way that consumers want to get their stuff each week. You've tackled that head on and said, actually, there's another way. I guess my big starting question is, why? That's mad, isn't it?
Well, yes, I've been called mad many times. I think it's madder to do nothing, actually, but that's a whole other debate. Yeah, I got a bee in my bonnet about Tesco. So years ago in my other life, I used to work for big global companies, Unilever, Sara Lee and Procter & Gamble, and I used to negotiate with the big supermarkets. So I kind of got a first-hand look at the way their business model works and the kind of unintended consequences that come about when you just put profit before everything. Short-term profit and shareholder return, it's all resulted in an unsustainable food system, and I'm worried about the future of food. So, yeah, it started about 15 years ago with this just concern about what was going on in the food industry and the impact of bad food and how bad food has become normal. And, when I was working with the supermarkets, it was all just about finding projects to make everything more profitable for them. And a lot of that meant taking nutrition and goodness out of food and just promoting the stuff that was high in fat and high in sugar and salt that's cheap for them to make and sell. It was a kind of discontent with the way things are, kind of looking at how it is and going, that can't continue. That can't continue for the future of food and farming. And what are we going to do about it?
But then translating that into an actual, a supermarket, and you're proudly calling your shops supermarkets. Mm-hmm. And people who visited, who've been down to the two stores, one in Brighton and one in Worthing, will know what they're like. And we've had a great experience. I've certainly had. But those listening that can't, they know what a supermarket is. And that's part of the reason why people go every week, week in, week out, even if they're going and grumbling. They rely on constancy and a kind of a lazy shopping. You don't have to think too hard about it. And they put stuff in front of you and you buy it. So if people kind of trying to imagine what an anti-supermarket looks like, or a new style supermarket, what Hisbe is, can you talk me through what the sort of shopping experience is? What would people expect when they walk in the door?
The whole goal was to turn the supermarket model on its head. It was me and my sister, Amy. We had a look at it and went, okay, if this is how it is, how should it be? We looked at every element of the supermarket experience and the business model and what wasn't working, and we turned it on its head. So, for example, most of our food is local. So most supermarket food is kind of highly processed food. It comes from all over the world, not made with nutrition and value in mind. So it creates an awful lot of waste, a lot of carbon footprint and a lot of inefficiency in the global supply chain. So, most of our food comes from Sussex. The fresh food suppliers in particular are people that we built up relationships with over a long time. And then there's whole areas of the shop that are packaging free because there's just such an enormous waste of plastic, and single-use plastic is bonkers. We just create this stuff and then throw it away after one use, and it just sits in the ground or in the sea somewhere afterwards. Or if we're lucky, it gets incinerated. There's a lot of inequality in the pay system for supermarket workers. They're not paid properly. So you've got the tax credit system, our tax holding up and subsidising the supermarket wage bills. There's the treatment of suppliers. There's the impact they have on town centres and localities. So there's all these things that we thought needed to change. And the best response to it we came up with was to create our own version. Everybody shops at supermarkets. 98% of the population shop at supermarkets, and only 8% of the purchases are online. So most people, almost everyone, is in a store shopping in a supermarket. And so that's what we know. And you have to start where people are, I think. So the idea was, if we could create a supermarket how it is, you could and made that big enough and offered it to enough people and enough people shop there, you could change the whole system. I'm not kidding myself that's going to happen in my lifetime. I'm probably just a baton bearer for the next lot who will do it a lot better than us. But we've had a go. We've created a model and we've shown what's possible. And it is possible to have a mini supermarket with everything you need under one roof, all fresh food, groceries, body care, cleaning stuff, and follow our values of local, seasonal, high welfare, minimum packaging, minimum waste, paying people fairly, paying suppliers fairly, and breaking the mold of the regular mainstream supermarket model.
You've got the 2 stores, and I know there are ambitions for more, but you also say not going to happen in your lifetime, I think, in terms of that big transformation. Mm-hmm. Do you have any idea of what a timescale might be? Is there a tipping point? I mean, we're in interesting times, aren't we, at the moment? Arguably more people than ever are thinking local. They're looking at provenance. They're looking at sustainability. They're looking at where food comes from and what they put in their bodies. And it's not just a sort of the top 5% that can afford organic, whatever, as has been presented by the media. We're getting close to probably a majority of people who are certainly thinking differently about the food that they buy. But we're also in a terrible economic state in which people are also very mindful of cost. And we've got a lot of people who just simply can't afford to do anything other than what the cheapest offer is. And that does tend to be where the supermarkets have a monopoly and play on that. I'm interested to know what you're hearing from your customers. How long do you think it's going to take? And do you think COVID and so on have set that back a little bit?
If I start with impact, and we look at the impact that 1 or 2 stores can have. So, our Brighton store's been going for 10 years. It's its 10th birthday in December. And thank you. We've saved over 1 million pieces of plastic packaging from going into landfill by selling stuff loose. We've saved 100,000 plastic bottles. We've created £7 million of income for the local economy that, if it were a Tesco, would have just been exported or centralised. We've passed 67% back to farmers, whereas if you're in a big supermarket, it's only past 9 or 10p in the pound back to suppliers. So we've created enormous impact for the local food chain and the local economy. And it's about replicating that in lots of different places. So our goal now is to grow the Sussex chain. So, we want to be able to open a store in Lewes and one in Hove, maybe a second in Brighton, maybe one in Chichester, and grow a kind of hub of Sussex stores to scale up the local suppliers and amplify those impacts so that we're saving many millions of pieces of plastic packaging from landfill. And we're an engine for creating community assets and societal value for the local economy. So by kind of 2030, that's ready for other towns to do the same and to learn from what we've done. I want to find a way to help other people create Hisbe hubs in their towns and on their high streets. And we've got this vision for a kind of an operating system, a how to Hisbe that's held digitally, that we can license and partner and franchise bits of and open source and give other bits of, so that we can create shops like ours all over the country. I don't think that we're going to change from our highly globalized, over-processed, industrialized food system to what it needs to be, a localized, regionalized food system. I don't think that's going to happen within my lifetime. But I do think that Hisbe has part of the answer and part of the puzzle. We're planting seeds. I'm planting seeds for the future cultivation. And we're seeing a lot of really great consolidation and collaboration in the space. So we need radical collaboration. We need radical collaboration between all the people who are sowing seeds. Mm-hmm. So that's when we start working with people on creating local supply chain, local depots for Sussex food, for example, and working with farmers and working with other people around the country who've got other bits of the puzzle. And that's happening. That kind of consolidation of efforts and collaboration is something that really we saw a lot of happening during COVID. Mm-hmm. And that needs to happen so that, we're building the networks amongst suppliers, consumers, producers and shops that are needed so that in 100 years or 50 years, we've got this localized or regionalized system.
This podcast is brought to you by Always Possible. But who are we?
Always Possible works with ambitious businesses, charities and public services that are thinking about what's next.
From architects to aerospace companies, puppet theatres to primary schools, business networks to big data analysts.
If you're wanting to be brave with some big decisions or to be clearer about what to prioritise, then an award-winning workshop from the Always Possible team is a brilliant starting point.
We care about just one thing: building ideas that work.
For creative, intuitive, and practical expertise, consider Always Possible as your strategic partner. Find out more about how we could power up your mission. Visit alwayspossible.co.uk.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
One of the remarkable things is that, your legal structure is that you're a social enterprise. So by the nature of that, the profits you make will be reinvested into the store and into the communities that you serve. And what's been really fascinating is to watch the crowdfunder that you've been doing recently, which I know is to sort of help with some of the COVID recovery, but more to look at the next phase of the business as well, and some of those really exciting sort of innovations you've talked about. But from what I've observed and what seems to be the power of a thing like a crowdfunder when it does well, yes, the money, but actually it's that galvanizing, and you talked about the collaborative effort, all the different people that need to be involved. And it's been really exciting to see people sharing, championing, talking about the Hisbe journey, sort of saying why it's so important to them as consumers or them as other businesses. And that's not an easy thing to engineer. So how, what's that experience been like for you, kind of raising capital in that way?
Yeah, it's been fantastic. I mean, I'm having the more fun doing the crowdfunder than I've had in years on Hisbe because, like I say, it's been a really tough 3 years for any small independent business. It's been very difficult. And when you're a social enterprise, you're sticking to your values, and values cost money. So to be able to stick to our values and still make prices affordable for our customers, it costs more. It's been a really rough 3 years. We've just made it really. And the shops are turning around and going the right direction finally, because obviously at the beginning we lost a lot of customers. People are coming back now, which is a relief. We've been in survival mode, for 3 years basically. But last year, Jack and I joined a business accelerator at Be the Earth. And Be the Earth is a family house, a foundation, philanthropic foundation that puts money into regenerative food and farming projects. And it's really, their work is really credible, and they kind of understand us. And we went on their Be the Earth accelerator. We went on their accelerator last year to kind of switch from survival to growth mindset again, because we'd taken such a beating. We lost middle management during COVID, and basically the founders came in and took those jobs back. So we're each doing like 3 jobs, and it's been very, very high pressure, and the workload's impossible really. But I know that's the same for any small business. But it was time to kind of switch back into growth mentality. So we started looking again at what it's going to take to turn a corner. And then after that, what it's going to take to grow again. And we went back to our growth plans, and we're working with these people in the long term to grow the business, to get over the hump this year, get back into opening stores, which is the big vision and what we want to do, and have impact in other towns. So yeah, the crowdfunder was part of that, because Be the Earth said, look, we'll match fund. If you can raise up to £150,000, we will match fund that money. And that was a great offer, especially at these times when, people aren't loaning small businesses money. Fundraising through grants has been very, very difficult. We've been rejected for 15 grants, including local ones, that we would have expected to at least have had some interest from. But, the grant funding space is also really difficult at the moment. They're switching their focus onto the most vulnerable in society because of the cost of living crisis, which is, of course, the right thing to do. But it does mean that funding gets diverted from social enterprises and people like us. So this match funding was a really good commitment from Be the Earth, and they're with us for the long term. Once we get over this stage, they're with us for the big raise for new stores. So yeah, we were like, let's do a crowdfunder. We haven't done one for ages. We started the shop that way. So the very first crowdfunder we did in 2013 was to open the Brighton store, when me and Amy had about £8 in the bank, and we'd just signed a 15-year lease. We were like, talk about throwing your hat over the wall. You have to go after it. So yeah, we're like, let's do a crowdfunder. It's not just about raising money. It's about getting everyone kind of enthused again. You know, you'd had COVID and cost of living and Ukraine and energy prices and so much negativity, and people are dealing with so much. So we were like, let's get our message out there again. Let's rally the suppliers and get the staff excited and get back out there and talk about all the great stuff we do. And the third thing is also reconnecting staff with customers, having conversations again that weren't about, you know, hand sanitizer. So, you know, yeah, it's done those three things really. And it's been a really lovely experience. It's been going since, it's been going for a few weeks now. We're very close to our £75,000 target. You know, we only need a few £1,000s more to unlock a whole investment of 100 grand. So that's really been great. We've done it with crowdfunder and we've got dual match funding. So Aviva, the insurance company, are also match funding us in the crowdfunder. So we're able to turn, you know, our followers and contributors into a much larger investment. It's a lifeline, you know, it's a lifeline for us this year, this money, this match funding and this crowdfunder. In our space, you know, we obviously talk to people doing similar stuff to us. Better Food in Bristol, Locafor, Planet Organic. Whether you've got 4 shops or 14 or 2, we're all facing the same problems from this sector. So it's great to be surviving, still here and still able to talk about growing because of the support that we've had from customers and suppliers and supporters.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's been exciting to watch and be a part of. Just a quick note for listeners: this podcast will almost certainly go out after the close of the crowdfunder, but we will update you on the outcome and other ways in which you can support Hisbe in the show notes. You know, a lot of the change you're trying to make, you know, you talk very eloquently about the direct impact that, you know, the stores have had on the communities. Economically and in terms of sort of perception shifting around where food comes from and so on. But for this to be a long game sort of catalyst, there's also policy changes that need to happen, aren't there? There's also the kind of systemic and structural idea of what it is to shop and to supply that needs to change. And so I'm interested to know what your thoughts are, or where you've seen positive or negative change sort of politically and in policy around regenerative farming and the kind of farm to fork story. I know you've had support from the Brighton Stores MP, Caroline Lucas, from the beginning, and I know she's spoken about and advocated for Hisbe as a model many times. I've heard her. You know, manifestos are being written right now as we're talking for the general election that's almost certainly coming in between sort of 9 and 12 months time. So I'm interested just from, I mean, I know you're an entrepreneur and you're absolutely looking at this from the perspective of let's roll our sleeves up and just do it. We haven't got time to wait for policy to change. But I wonder if that's informed what you think about that kind of slightly more politics, policy, campaigning level sort of approach to this, and where you see change potentially happening there for the better.
That's a big topic, and I don't have a lot of faith in central government making good food policy, honestly.
Sure.
It's clear that they pander to the big companies that are creating bad food in the first place. But where I put my hopes and my efforts and my resources and time is in local policy making. In Brighton, we're very lucky to have the Brighton and Hove Food Partnership, and there's one in Worthing as well. They're very active. They're very, very good at bringing in resource to do all the right things locally. So that's where I'm going to be no good rocking up to number 10 and trying to persuade anyone and anything. I'm not diplomatic enough. But when you can sit around with real people who live where you live and advocate for policy on a regional or local level with those people, that's where I fit in. There are people locally pushing for a plastic-free city, and Brighton and Hove Food Partnership galvanised us over an 8-year project and achieved Sustainable City Gold City status, which is amazing. Like, that happened. It was during COVID. I remember we had a celebration on Zoom because we couldn't get together. But, you know, there's an incredible collaborative effort locally to build good policy and to challenge central policy by collaboration and consolidating efforts. So that's where I put my efforts.
Let's imagine it's 100 years' time. Let's say that it's the next generation of supermarket rebels are leading the charge. Hisbe is still seen as the pioneer. What would you name you want to be famous for? You know, maybe if there was one thing that people are saying, this is what This is what the sisters did and created and enabled. If there was one thing, what would you want that to be? What would you want me to be saying?
Oh, God. I want Hisbe to be famous because it's a blueprint for how it should be. So I want the blueprint to be famous. It almost doesn't matter if it's Hisbe written on the door. It's the blueprint. It's the operating model. It's the way forward. The sisters, I suppose we represent the most unlikely. Like, we grew up in poverty. Amy and I grew up in poverty, eating frozen food from B-Jams. Like, I didn't chop a vegetable till I was 26. Like, we didn't know anything about food, and we didn't grow up with good food. And we just got to be in our bonnets about something and tried to do something about it. You know, we didn't go to private school. We don't have access to resources and money. We had to enter this world that we don't understand of dealing with commercial landlords and banks and investors and so on. So, you know, we're very audacious. We're just ridiculously audacious to believe that two kids like us could do what we did. So I suppose if there was going to be us known for anything, I'd love just to be an example of that, of two audacious little Muppets standing up and doing something. It's been going for 10 years. We started 13 years ago. It took us 3 years to get it off the ground, but we had a go, and we had a go at it. And it's not perfect and never will be. And we've had triumphs and failures, but that's good and that's fine. But we had a go. And that's what I would, if we're known for anything, that's what I'd like to be known for, as an example of that.
Fantastic answer. My hunch is that background, that lived experience is exactly why you've ended up with an alternative supermarket and something that is about challenging the system, recognizing, and as you say, taking it to where people are at, rather than ending up with a posh deli somewhere in a gentrified neighborhood that just caters for those that have the entitled audacity or that sense of, well, of course I'll do this.
Yeah.
So actually, I think that the fact that you don't want all children to just be eating terrible frozen food from B-Jams, R.I.P. B-Jams, of course, but there are, we still have many others that are similar, is where a bit of that fire came from. And I think that's probably quite important.
Our shop isn't affordable to the people. It wouldn't have been affordable to us growing up. And, we can't expect people at the very low end of the pay scale to make the change. I'm quite kind of clear about that. I don't expect people who haven't got the money to come in. But what I do kind of expect is that whole swathe of well-off people who are on average salaries or more, who talk about this stuff and talk about caring about this stuff, to do something.
But it's about the intention. From what I see, the reason it's a bit more expensive is because you're paying people properly, and because it's being sourced in ways that aren't, as you said earlier, taking out all the nutrition, ripping out the kind of the actual value of the food. It's treating suppliers properly, and your intention is to honor that and sell it at a fair price. And who knows? Hopefully, one day everybody will be able to afford good quality food.
Yeah. It's right. It starts with the people who've got the money and who've got choices and can make a choice between a free range egg and an organic egg, and the people who can buy the better sausages and pick up the bargains, because a lot of our fruit and veg is very comparable. It starts with the people who can make the choices and ripples out that way, and then becomes, of course, higher volume and more affordable anyway. And as we kind of consolidate and create local and regional supply chains, the efficiencies will come and the prices will change. But that's going to take probably generations, but that will come too.
It does come, and it is about that normalization. When I was a child, a free-range egg would have been seen as something elite and sort of out of reach. You'd be prepared to pay 10 times as much as one from a battery farm. Whilst we still have battery eggs, free-range eggs are normalized now, aren't they? The majority of families, that will be the eggs that they buy.
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Ruth, as I knew it would be. It will be very exciting to see what the next 10 years plus brings for Hisbe. So thank you for being on the Possibility Club.
Thanks, Richard. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Possibility Club, Practical Bravery. If you enjoyed this episode, do like, share, review, tell everybody about it. Look in the show notes for all the details of today's guest, stuff we talked about, stuff that's of interest, new things to read, new things to listen to. And if you are running a business or a charity and you are trying to accelerate or improve the impact that you have in the world, if you want to be famous for what you do and what you change rather than just what you sell, then talk to us. alwayspossible.co.uk. We want to hear from you, we want to talk to you, we want to amplify and elevate your ideas, and who knows, we might be able to help you feel more confident and clear about what's next. alwayspossible.co.uk. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with a new special guest and a new insight on practical bravery in action.
The Possibility Club is an Always Possible podcast. The interviewer was Richard Freeman for Always Possible, and the producer and editor was me, Chris Thorpe Tracy, for Lo-Fi Arts. Have a good week.
alwayspossible.co.uk.
Lo-Fi